CRPs, component relations professionals out there. Let's get started here right away because we got a lot to go over in the best possible way. If everybody could type into the chat, first off, if you want to tell me, how's your day going? How's this hump day treating you? We're turning hump day into webinar day here at Bill Highway for CRPs. But also, can you hear me? Just go ahead and type into the questions, a Y for yes and for no. And I am sharing my screen and want to make sure that that's coming through okay. So please let me know if there's any issues there or if it's lagging or anything. So great, Erica, Scott, RJ, John, Stacy, welcome everybody. Glad to have you here. Okay, we're going to go ahead and jump right into it. We're talking. So this is part 3. So if you haven't been with us over the last 2 Wednesdays, we have a couple of recordings out there for part 1 and part 2 of the chapter dashboards and some really good information. So today we're talking about how to share and leverage your data. Okay, so just a real quick series overview. And if you want these links to the recordings, just type into the questions and my marketing team will get those to you. But the part 1 was we talked about what's measured is real, so aligning your organization, talking about, hey, what are we going to actually measure? How are we going to decide what we're going to measure, and how can we make sure that as a CRP I'm aligning to the strategic objectives at national, but also hearing out my chapters to build out what's best for them and kind of finding that middle ground. And then last week, part 2, we talked about, all right, now we got to define how the heck do we get our data. There's so many holes in integrity issues that can exist when it comes to data collection because of the way the different structures that are set up out there for different chapters. I'm sure each of you have a bit of uniqueness to you. So how do we gather rather than hunt for data? And now today, we're going to be talking about, all right, so here we are. Well, how do we use this data? How do we share it? How do we leverage it? How do we make it useful to the organization to hit our goals? So putting your data to use, and we're going to be talking a lot about keeping cadence, okay? So let's talk about our learning objectives, the process we're going to go over, understanding and reflecting on how data is shared in your organization, next steps, so how data is used to make decisions in your organization, and then we're going to share some tools and resources. So what data do you already have that would be valuable to yourself or decision makers? And we'll also connect you with some associations that have agreed to let us share their information, and you can contact them if their situation is applicable to where you're at. So just for everybody new, my name is Kyle Bazzi. I am the Director of Growth here at Bill Highway. I'm also a proud Detroiter. I always put that because it's a part of who I am, and that is where we are headquartered. And Bill Highway is a technology solution and services that is built out just for component-based organizations. So we understand you. We get your problems. You're not alone, and we're excited to be here. All right, so before we get started here, let's really quick talk about why you should use data. Because if you haven't asked yourself the question yet and just assume that you needed to, there's some useful stuff in here, especially when you're trying to tell a story. Or we had a really great call with an association yesterday that they had a call with their senior leadership and their board, and the two of them can't agree on what's important. And so this is where you can come in with data and help tell a story to get things done. And when we talk about data, data is truth, right? It is black and white. You get rid of the subjectiveness. Data improves things so we can make decisions better. Data predicts the future. Data breeds innovation. And I love this one, and here's why. Because a lot of your senior leadership and boards and CEOs and executive directors are setting strategic objectives around innovation. Data breeds innovation. And then data is your competitive edge. This is a really great article as we were doing research for today's webinar, and it was on LinkedIn, but 5 reasons why you should use data to make your life better. And then we also found another stat, and we'll share this link with you here from Associations Now. 75% of business leaders in North America and Europe believe that they're fully taking advantage of data. Only 4% of them actually are, okay? So 75% believe it's important, 4% believe that they are. Now, why is that important? Because I don't want you to feel like, well, we're such a mess, or we collect data and we don't use it, or we're not making decisions off of it, or we don't know how to collect it. You're not alone. and there are solutions out there, okay? So make the decision to figure it out, and we are here as a resource to make sure that you do. Okay, so for all my note takers, and I always get emails after the webinars with people's notes, and I love that because we can learn from it. For all the note takers, this is a part where you're going to want to write down. So the process, we're going to talk about the format. So decide what is most effective for how we're going to communicate it. We're going to talk about accessibility, who has access to this data, and then communication. And this is where I put a lot of emphasis into creating a cadence. Because oftentimes we define what we need to measure, we build it, we communicate it, we have the data, but we don't keep a cadence of reviewing it, and it falls on deaf ears or people forget about it. Every time you guys have a project, every time you're rolling something out new, if there's an issue inside the organization, even a challenge that you start measuring, this is the process you need to go through every time, okay? And so this isn't just once, this is every time you're adding a stat to the chapter dashboard or measuring something new to figure out if it's a problem, or you found maybe a success and you never were measuring that success before with maybe one of your marketing tactics. You need to do this every time, so it's rinse and repeat every time you come up with something new. Or strategic objectives are set, and now you're concentrating on retention. Rinse and repeat this process. All right. So we're going to talk about format. And I want you guys to think through this too, and you can answer inside the chat if you'd like, and share some information with us. But I'm sure everybody's at a different part of their association's journey for chapter relations. And when I say chapter relations, for everyone that's new, component, council, sections, divisions, state associations, whatever you call them, whether they're fully federated and autonomous, or whether you have more control in your terms of affiliation or bylaws. This fits for all of it. But choosing the right format is key in how we're going to do this. And you need to KISS. Keep it simple, silly, or stupid, whatever you want to call it. Who remembers from the last webinar where we went over Mariner Management chapter dashboard? And I'll make sure, Sarah, if you can drop that in the link for everybody to take a look at again. And they set up 3 different columns, right? I think it was red, yellow, and green. And then they set different metrics on why you would fit in one of those. And then they had the rows listed out into buckets of operational efficiency or revenue growth and things like that. That is what we're talking about, KISS. You've got to keep it simple to make decisions off of the format that you use, but don't just use someone else's format. You want to figure out what's going to work for you. And you're going to hear a common theme today about starting small. So start somewhere, roll it out to a select group, see if that works, get their feedback, make tweaks, and then roll it out to the larger group. And is your format easy to update? Now I want you to think through this real quick. How many of you have issues updating data, whether it's from national and you're getting information from a different department, or maybe it's from your chapters that are sending information to you? And again, we had in part 2 some really great tools that we reviewed or are offered up that can aggregate this data for you, display this data for you, so on and so forth. The one key item that I want you to just be aware of on this is what we call paralysis by analysis. So why aren't we making any progress? I love this little cartoon. There's a case of analysis paralysis going around the office, right? So there's so much data that we don't know how to view it. The format that you come up with is extremely important on how it displays this. And if you're going to take one thing from the format discussion today, I'd say make it visual, okay? If it's a bunch of rows and numbers, you're expecting everybody to have this level of knowledge and interpret it the same way. When you show pictures, for better or worse, when you show pictures, it's easier for people to digest whatever you're communicating, okay? So if you're struggling right now in showing your data, and you're saying, Kyle, I got dashboards, no one's looking at them, or I got dashboards and everybody's eyes kind of gloss over, then take it upon yourself to A, ask why, and then B, make sure that you're putting it into visual formats, because people will interact, engage, and digest it a lot better for meaningful conversations. All right, so number 2 for this process is accessibility. So, and again, these are questions that I want you to ask yourself, because if you're not doing this, I want you to think about it, okay? And I want you to write it down and either ask how you can do it, which we'll explain some examples, but this is stuff that you need to work on. So accessibility is about visibility, okay? So again, I know your UCRPs are fighting a civil war. One side you got the chapter leaders who don't want Big Brother to mess with their data or take advantage of them. And then you have your team at headquarters and senior staff or your board that you got to tell stories to. One of the things that I truly believe in, and we see a lot of success out of, is visibility. So if you expect people to go to a web page to check the data every day or every week or every month, you're doing yourself a disservice. If it's inside your office, put it on the wall. Track it on a whiteboard in one of your conference rooms or by your desk. Send it. Don't expect, because it's updated every Friday, for people to check it every Friday. Send it out and maybe put a quick couple sentences about some subjective takeaways that you see from the data. Visibility is incredibly important. Can you tell if people are viewing it? So the whole build it and they will come type mentality is a quick recipe for failure. If you build it, doesn't mean they're going to come. You got to make sure that you're measuring, even yourself, are people looking at it? When you roll it out and you show it to your senior leadership team, that's not the end. That's like the end of the first inning in a game of baseball. You still got so many more to go. You got to see, are they shaking their heads? Are they engaging with the data? Or did they kind of look at it and say, like this graph right here, you can look at it and say, okay, great, and then move on. Or are they finding the data useful? Okay, so can you tell people are using it? What are you doing to ensure people see it? Again, whether that's sending out an email, whether that is having it in the cadence of a meeting, whether that is making sure that it's written on a wall. What are you doing to ensure people see it? And then does that correlate, does all of this correlate with how often it is updated? If the data that's being showed is useful on a daily basis, but you're updating it weekly, is that an issue? Or does it only need to be updated once a month and you're putting way too much work in it, people are only going to view it on the first of the month or something like that? So think about the frequency of the updates. Sometimes it's a restraint because you can't update it quicker, and that's a project that perhaps you need to work on. One of them that we see a lot is, are you only getting data from your chapters annually, maybe on membership or on growth and engagement numbers, retention numbers, things like that? And do you need that more often? Because then we can figure out how to get that done. Right? So how can we roll out a project to solve problems for the chapters where you'll get your data in a quicker fashion? And then do you make it easy to actually access it to? So if I did want to see it as a part of your team or a chapter leader, can I do that right now? Right? Can I go see the data, or are you keeping this in an Excel spreadsheet that you're sending out that I'm only going to see it when you actually send that email? Accessibility is huge. If you want people to put this into their daily routines or their monthly routines, let them, as best you can, play with it on their terms. And I already touched on this one, so we'll skip it. Okay, I just saw a hand up. Any questions here or anything like that when we talk about access? Go ahead and type into the chat. So I got some people raising their hands. Ask your questions into the question box there on the GoToWebinar, and we'll make sure to answer those. All right, so as those questions come in, I'm going to go ahead and jump to number 3 here about communication. This is where I see most of the CRPs fall down, okay? And that is around cadence, all right? So do me a favor real quick. Type into the chat for me. I see some other questions coming in, but type into this, and I want to cover this first. What is your cadence of review, okay? And let's specifically talk about the 2 different parties. The chapter leaders, what's your cadence of review with your chapter leaders, and what's your cadence of review with whoever you're working with at national. So that could be your senior leadership, that could be your board, that could be maybe your marketing department. If you define metrics, how and how often are you reviewing those metrics, okay? So we're going to go ahead and drop some resources into the chat for you. One is a really great system called Traction. and it's the level 10 meetings, okay? So the tool that we're talking about is the level 10 meetings. It's a really great agenda, a proven agenda, okay, that you can implement with different meetings that you have, where it reviews not only the data, but has a section called IDS, Identify, Discuss, and Solve. And again, this is all built into their process and very easily taught. So the link that we're going to drop you is a video that goes over this, like a 6-minute video. And it's this cadence, and they call it the pulse of the organization, okay? This is a really important concept. What's the pulse? So I had an amazing meeting the other day with an association doing these knowledge shares that we're doing now. So I fly out to go on premise and do as long as they want, up to a couple hours, just going over all their projects and their problems and their challenges when it comes to chapters. And what I find lacking the most is some kind of cadence reviewing data, okay? So check out that link to the book's called Traction by Gino Wickman. The tool that I'm specifically talking about in the book is called Level 10 Meetings. And then make sure you understand this. It's not about how often you're sending it out, okay? It's about, are you sending it out consistently at that same time? So if you do Monday morning at 9 a.m., every Monday morning, then make sure it goes out every morning on Monday at 9 a.m., okay? Don't send it out sporadically. Understand humans are habitual, right? And the better you put me into a process that I can predict, the more I'm going to be in tune with what you're trying to do, all right? So consistency is greater than quantity, not quality. Sorry, I mistyped there. So consistency is greater than quantity. And on the same note, too, we're going to get into a few slides down the road here. It is also greater than quality, too, because a lot of you are dealing with inaccurate or data that has holes in it, okay? And you don't have a choice, so we got to get started somewhere. It's about creating this cadence with the consistency that will help us roll out things more successfully at a later date, okay? All right, any questions on level 10 or the traction book or the cadence or consistency? Anyone want examples of how those meetings are ran? Just let us know. We'd be happy to send some stuff over. And I see a bunch of questions and chats coming in. We are going to get to those questions in just a moment. Okay, here's another great tool. So flip your page or draw a line under what you just took notes on. And let's talk about decision making real quick. This is a very useful tool that I want you guys to employ. So when we're thinking about decision making, there's 3 different buckets: think, know, and prove, okay? And if you draw this on a board or create an Excel spreadsheet with different tabs, you're going to set a goal, all right? And I'm going to go over an example of this on the next slide. You're going to set a goal, and you're going to throw all of your ideas from you, chapter leaders, members, other team members at HQ into the think column, all right? And the way you can move what your ideas, your hypothesis, is how you want to treat them. You put those into the think, and you can move those into the know column when you have some kind of results to back it up, okay? Now, this might not be statistically relevant yet because you don't have a big enough sample size. This might be subjective evidence from feedback you're getting from chapter leaders, depending on what we're measuring. It doesn't matter what it is. You got this feeling, or the team's got a feeling, that it goes into the know column. And then you can move something into the prove column, which should be by far your shortest column. That is something you can tie to a goal or tie to a strategic objective, okay? All right. Any questions on that? Let me give an example, and it'll clear it up a little bit. So let's, for instance, say we have a goal of increasing member retention. How many of you guys have that goal right now? Like that is something that's on the strategic roadmap, or you've identified, wow, our retention is 83%. It's going to be really hard to continue to grow at 5% a year over year, or 10% year over year, if we can't retain more than 90%. All right, so let's say increasing member retention. So we think, here's an idea, that if we train chapters to call members 90 days before renewal, all right, this is the idea. Maybe marketing came up with it. Maybe your CEO said this in a meeting or sent you an email at 3 in the morning. But this idea came out. It goes into the think column, okay? Now, we can research it all we want at other associations, We can then actually do some really great data on this specific thing that it actually works. So I didn't just make this up. This comes from a report from Mariner Management. All right, that's great. It still goes into the think column because you haven't proven it works for you yet, or you haven't proven how it works for you yet. So then all of a sudden we roll this out. Okay, this is one that we decided we want to give a shot at. So we can move it to the no column when we see an uptick in retention. Maybe it seems that the chapter leaders are adopting the program. You're getting a lot of great feedback from your presidents or treasurers or whatever that position is at your chapters, okay? So you can start moving into the no column. Or maybe you got a little bit of data. Or marketing saying, hey, the month so far is actually going really well. We're not losing as many month to date as we should do, okay? But you only move it into the prove column when it helps you achieve a goal, or helps you achieve or get to a strategic objective, makes a material impact, all right? And that would be something like over 40% of members that are spoken with by a chapter volunteer, again, under this kind of model, end up renewing when called. Wow, that's fantastic. That means this is a lever now as a CRP you can pull. You can make sure that your chapters are doing, and you can measure it on your chapter dashboard. It is worth measuring. And 90% of chapters have already opted in over whatever time period. All right, obviously I'm making this stuff up. But you can see how this is a tool for decision making. It's a decision making framework that you can communicate with your chapters. First off, agree on what the goal is before we start arguing about what we're going to do. Because if someone's saying, I think we should do this, someone else is saying, I think we should send out emails, but one's talking about membership growth and the other's talking about membership retention, we're not on the same page, right? So get them on the same page with the goal and then put it into the framework. Do you think? Is it a hypothesis? Do you know it and why? Or can we actually prove this thing out with data? All right? So think, know, prove. TKP. All right. So some questions coming in about that. Anything you want me to clarify? Because I got a couple questions that this will help make sense a little bit more. Whatever you do, whatever you read, whatever resource it is, you have to make sure, I want you to write this down and underline it, and then circle it and bold it. Start small, okay? Start small. We see so many associations that, or fraternities or sororities, so component-based nonprofits, that roll out these huge programs, right? And the idea is sound, but because they roll it out so big and they didn't tweak it along the way, it makes it extremely difficult either to get adoption, to get buy-in. There's too many people in uprise against it. So start small whatever you do, even rolling out data or a dashboard. Start small with a group of early adopters. You know, we keep talking to you guys about a working group. And from that, make sure you tweak it and then roll it out to a broader group or a bigger group, okay? Making sure you have that iterative process on the feedback. So one of the tips for starting small, we were looking at the majority of association of widget professionals. Membership drops off after 3 years. Great. Somebody on your team, doesn't have to be you, maybe it was, identified after 3 years for whatever reason it drops off. That's fantastic analysis. So going back to the think, know, prove, what are some ideas that we can throw into the think column that can abate that? And then data shows that if they keep the member for 4 years, then they're there for life, or there for however long, okay? So our goal, we could say, is to get them to get that past that 4-year mark. What's happening at this 3-year mark? Most might think we need to send more renewal notices to third-year members, but really you need to dig in deeper and review the patterns and just start trying things. And try it with a small subset of members. Don't try it with all third-year members yet. Try it with 10% of them. And try a few different things to see what works, okay? So that's a way to start small. And there's a good article on this that we'll send out. So I was thinking through this as we were building the presentation, and I thought, wow, didn't we learn this at Bill Highway? And so one of the things that we're building right now, or working on as an idea, is to build a community for all of you, okay? So we have like a ton of people that are signing up for these webinars, and it's been really eye-opening to us about how we can help CRPs with education. And we've uncovered a lot of things. I'm sure some of you probably seen surveys from us, and thank you if you filled those out, because it's been helping us get educated on what you need. And a lot of you keep saying, we want to connect with other CRPs, but a lot of the associations don't fit our structure, so it doesn't make sense. So one of the things we're working on is tagging the types of structures that are out there so you can communicate better. But instead of making a big bet right now and opening up and buying a community software for you, what we're going to try to do is, and a lot of you, by the way, have told us, like, hey, we'd love for Build Highway to create like a higher logic community, moderate it, and create a resource center. That's where we're headed, okay? That's where we're headed for you. This is real life. But what we're going to do is start a LinkedIn group instead, all right? I have about 25 CRPs that have been incredible in giving us information on what would be helpful. They are CAEs, they're leaders inside the association space, and they told us higher logic, but that's not doable right now for me because I got to prove out, I got to prove out that you guys are going to use it before I invest all this money and time into it and pitch my senior leadership, right? So we're going to go with a LinkedIn group instead of buying the community software, and then we're going to learn from that small bet, okay? Because I can go set that up right now, create it, and send an email out this afternoon, and we're going to do that soon. And so then that way, I can get started on it now, and then make sure the value's at least subjectively there, so I can move it into the no column. And then once I know that you guys are finding value out of it, then I will move it to the proven column when we want to build something out and can tie it to, yes, more people are engaging with our education that we're doing for free and making a huge investment in because of this community software. Or you guys are able, like right now, if I told you to go find case studies on restructuring your chapters, does everybody know where to find those? Because they're out there. And we want to create that knowledge bank under the community software or something like that to share those, okay? So again, this is a little about us and not so much about association, but the concept is exactly the same, right? So if we find that the community is solving problems for CRPs, which is our goal is to solve problems for you guys, then we will invest in software. We'll create better tools based on your feedback along the way, because we're going to get new information once we launch the LinkedIn group, okay? John, I'd love to see the chapter restructure info. Yeah, John, we got a few different things to send you because it's quite a big topic, so we will send it over to John. Okay, and I saw that, Nancy, did you have a question? I didn't see it in the thing, but my team just texted me saying, make sure that I get to your question. So Nancy, go ahead and type your question into the chat if you need me to get to it. All right, and there's a bunch of other questions that I'm going to get to at the end because they don't fit exactly in here right now, okay? So please don't think I'm not answering those because there's a lot of them. All right, so again, that concept of think, know, prove is extremely important, and starting small is just a ground rule, right? So think about ground rules for this game. Starting small is a must. Don't launch something huge the first shot, okay? Let's start small. Let's get into a flow. All right, let's talk about influencing behavior now. So ask yourself some questions, and this is where you got to get real with yourself. Whatever you've done with chapter dashboards, okay? Whatever you've done, I've learned a lot of your stories. I want you to ask yourself, have you witnessed a change in behavior? Okay? Have you witnessed a change in behavior? Have you asked chapter leaders what will incentivize them? Have you surveyed, or it doesn't have to be a formal survey either. It could just be you call 10 of them. Ask what they need, right? Ask what would incentivize them. Ask what data would be useful to them as well. So that way you can roll out data where you're tracking something with them that maybe matters more to you than them. But you're also rolling it out with things that matter to them, so that way they're incentivized to stay in tune with all of it, right? They're going to engage with all of it. And then think about, and a lot of you here, I see the names, are new at your associations, okay? This is either a whole new role for you in your career, or you've done this before and you're in a new organization. What has worked and what hasn't worked in the past at that particular association? Don't make the mistake of trying to roll something out that worked at the past association and you didn't do your due diligence on how it's going to fit into the journey of your current association. All right, so there's a really great example that I wanted to show you for influencing behavior out there from the Military Officers Association of America. And what they have done is created an awesome tool for incentivizing chapters to grow membership numbers, okay? So I'm going to pop over to that in just a second. And Sarah, if you can drop the chat or the link into the chat so everyone can go check it out for themselves as well. And you'll see the principles we talked about here hold true. Because before we use this tool, I've checked their website every week to see are they updating it for national. And they are, because I've seen a lot of examples that looked great, but it's not being updated in 2 years or something like that. So this is a great tool where it's a recruitment tracker, okay, updated weekly. So report a new chapter member, great for sending 1 to 5 chapter members at a time. So they gave them the tools, again, the access. And then if it's bigger than that, which hopefully it is, because that'd be awesome, send over a sample file. So I'm going to pop over to this real quick, okay? And this is the Military's Officers Association of America's website. They have a really great, you see this chapters and councils button? If you don't have it at national or something like it, I would advise you to take a look into that, because most chapters are probably looking for some resources. And when you look at the retention incentives, the chapter recruiting tracker, you can actually see what they have done here. So they have chapter categories, okay, codes, names, and then how many members were added and what's the incentive qualified. Great tool, public on their website, something that we all can learn from. And so you can see the data up here. It's relevant. Don't send something out that's a year old that really turns people off. All right? Let me jump back over to the webinar here. Okay, a quick tip here as well. And that tip is fear is normal, all right? So we've gone over some examples and talked about some concepts today. But I want you to understand fear is normal. Fear of not knowing how to do it right, fear of finding out things that contradict conventional wisdom, or maybe things that you've made hypotheses on. When you do that think, know, and prove, be the leader in your organization if the culture needs it. In the sense that be willing to admit your mistakes, okay? If you came up with a hypothesis that's wrong, that's great, because the goal isn't for necessarily that tactic to work out. The goal is to get to where you need to go, okay? And if something's not working out, you want to know as quick as possible, all right? Fear of having to do things differently as a result of what the business intelligence is telling them. This is where life can be a little complicated, or a lot complicated, where data is telling you one thing, right? But your fear of having to do things a little bit differently as a result of it can also paralyze you, okay? That's normal, all right? And the reasons we say all these things, and there's a great article here for why associations struggle with business intelligence, is because don't feel like you have to have this figured out. Don't feel like just because others have it or are doing it really well that you're kind of embarrassed that you're not. At the end of the day, you're probably doing great things that they're not doing in different areas, okay? It's about your journey and just learning what tools are available to fit what the needs are currently, okay? So just know you're not alone and get over that fear however you best can. Get over it, okay? Because you got to be a leader in your organization. We've said this out before, but this is really applicable in my mind for what we're talking about today. And this is the Association for Corporate Growth. And we're going to be doing a webinar with Gary in January about restructuring chapters. So John and a couple other people, don't know exactly who it is, that talk about chapter restructuring. This is one of the examples I'm going to send out, because ACG did the chapter restructuring, and this is their services provided to chapters, their affiliation agreement, and or the services that are provided under the affiliation agreement. And what I wanted to show you was, and see if my team dropped that link for you, or we'll send it to you, so I think it's a Word doc. And this is a great template for you guys to use if you're restructuring. But one of the things I wanted to show you was, when you see all these listed services provided to chapters, I want you to just be conscious of tracking data, okay, that can show why, if, and how that is working or not working, all right? Because it might be a great idea like financial support, right? Financial best practices toolkit. But if nothing improves, then just because you rolled the tool out, it doesn't matter, okay? It could have been the best idea in the world, but if it's not working, we got to figure out how to reapproach that. And that's why we say start small. So if you try to do all this at once, you're not going to have time to get the feedback loops to improve your tools. Okay? So we're going to send this out to you, and it's got a ton of great information. If you are looking at chapter restructuring, then dashboards and data are wildly important to you. And this is really great content for you to be able to structure some things off of. Real quick tip here as we're getting to the end of the webinar is just understand pitfalls. All right. So for instance, if you release the dashboard, 80% of your chapters don't file taxes on time. Okay. Mediocrity becomes status quo. Okay. So relying too heavily on existing data might not lead to your end goals. All right. Just because you rolled it out doesn't mean that it's working. Just because it took you a long time and a lot of effort doesn't mean it's working. So start small, see the results. Okay. What's the quote? Don't confuse actions with results. Just because you're busy doesn't mean you're making an impact. And I'm not necessarily just saying use a CRP, but it's whatever we're measuring. We got to make sure we're getting the results off of it. Right? Now you might get new information that it's leading to a different result that's positive, and that's fine. But at least it's creating a desired result. So this is a very simplistic way to rate yourself. Okay, and you see 1, 2, 3, and 4 stars. So the neglected data, you can only get 1 star if a lot of people are in the organization and no one's looking at it, or a couple people are. It usually gets forgotten until the next data poll. This one's important. How many of you have data out there that no one really reviews until the next time it's polled or until someone asks a question? If you create a cadence, you'll see over time that people will put the dashboards in your data that you're measuring for success into the routine. It's not going to happen overnight or the first or second time or the first or second month even, but over time. So who forgets about it until the next time you show it? Overlooked data, so we consistently pull our KPI data, but it briefly gets reviewed. We discuss some plans and ideas, but nothing really comes to fruition. I was just talking to an association that this is what they said. They said, Kyle, we have the data. We're polling it. There's some holes, but it's good enough. But we talk about it. We have a meeting about it, but then we never have anybody that's making decisions off of it. And then you have useful data at 3 stars. Data is developed, is used to develop some strategies and plans. We could definitely ingrain it more day-to-day functions. And then if you're just crushing it, the compelling data that's leading your organization, that's helping you make decisions, that's helping you stay on the cutting edge and innovative with your members and your chapter leaders, so on and so forth. This is a tool for you to help communicate to other team members, maybe at HQ, that aren't getting it. All right? That maybe you might say, hey, look, you think everything's fine, but this is really where we're at, and we're not alone. Like, there's other examples where we can improve, and we need to step outside the box here. Okay, so let's talk about some lessons learned here. Create a plan to share data. Again, for a CRP, because you're not just dealing with one dimension of the organization, you're dealing with chapter leaders and you're dealing with your national HQ staff, is create a plan to tell a story, okay? Know what goals that you're shooting for. Find out what others are doing and replicate it, and be aware of those pitfalls, all right? So I'm going to get to a lot of your questions, but I'm going to ask you a favor real quick. If you could have any tool or template to help you with a current project, what would that be? Do you have something in mind? And if you don't, maybe you just want to tell me, here's what we need to solve, but I don't know what's out there, okay? Either one. What we're finding is it's even hard for you guys to Google resources because nothing really comes up with the nuance of the chapter-based operations, right? So if you just had to send out a great, a marketing template or email drip campaign to increase the retention, that'd be fine. But since you have all your chapters, how do we build in the cadence of getting them to do it? How do we make that work if we can't make them do it, so on and so forth? So the question I have for you is, if you could have any tool or template to help you with a current project, what would it be? And then next week, as we always like to explain what's coming up next, as we're here at the end of the webinar today, next week is obviously Thanksgiving, so happy Thanksgiving to everybody. I hope you have a great holiday with family and loved ones. So Tuesday, we're going to move our Hump Day webinar to Tuesday, so it's still the middle of the week, since it's a shorter week next week. And we're just going to talk about, it's going to be called CRP Talk. So come as you are, ask questions. We're going to be ready with a ton of resources. We love it because we're getting just an incredible amount of emails asking us for resources and things like that. So we thought, hey, why not do a webinar and we can collaborate? We'll share everyone's questions. So maybe you weren't thinking about something and a different CRP was, and we'll share that with you as well. Okay. We're going to do that at 12 o'clock next Tuesday. And then we're going to drop a link into the chat right now where you can find all these recordings. So if you haven't seen the latest, the last 2 weeks of chapter dashboards, all of that is on our knowledge bank. Okay, so you can come check that out. It's all free, the presentation, the slides, the on-demand YouTube recordings. And then we also add a bunch of other materials that we haven't even created that we think are helpful as well. Okay, whether those are case studies or membership reports for chapter-based associations, volunteer guiding principal handouts, so on and so forth. So different tools and templates that you can find here. If there's something that you've been looking for and can't find here, this is what we're investing in, so please tell us, and we will work to add it along the way, okay? Awesome. All right, so that is the extent of our of the material today. I'm going to get some questions. If you want to ask some more or anything else you want us to cover, please let us know. But I'm going to get some questions here in the chat for everybody as we're trying to keep these webinars to 45 minutes with presentation and Q&A from some of the feedback we've got from you. All right, so John, great quote, negativity about the future is fear, positivity about the future is faith. They're the same thing, the only difference is your view of the future. My man, I'm going to write that down and tape that to my desk. That's a great one. That is something that we see quite often, John, so thank you. We got some questions. Anyone that's got additional questions around the chapter restructuring, let us know. Type in, we got some really great resources. That's a topic we continue to come across around how to do that. Any resources, or can you show some associations that it's worked for? So let us know if that's something that you guys are doing, or maybe even that you as a CRP think needs to be done, but getting your team members at HQ on board might be difficult. Let us know, because we see a lot of that. So Scott, we'll definitely send over that stuff to you. He wants to see some of those resources around the restructuring. So what we do is we have some case studies. So there's been some really good organizations that have done it, and like I said, we're setting up webinars with them to have them tell them story and tell you not just what went great, because there's a lot that goes into it and bumps along the way. And then also Scott, John, and it looks like a couple others will also share some other resources to go talk to. So one of them that we're a huge fan of is Mariner Management Consulting, and I'm sure there's others out there. Okay, so if I'd love to learn something I don't know, but we've seen Peggy and Peter over at Mariner Management do some incredible things around this with associations. If you haven't checked out their blog, it's an incredible resource. We've learned and really grown alongside them for CRPs. So a lot of questions on that. We'll send out some more information on it. And we're going to be sending out, I'd love to get a survey sent out to you just around, what are you guys doing for chapter dashboards or different data sets that is working? And what have you rolled out that is not working? Sharing that is extremely helpful, because we want you guys to connect with each other on that kind of stuff too. Stacy just asked, what is that blog? Stacy, check the chat. I'll have my team drop the Mariner Management blog into the chat for you. Okay, so we'll put a link there. It's Mariner Management Marketing or Consulting.com or something. If you just Google Mariner Management with Peggy and Peter, it should come up, but we'll drop that link into the chat in just a moment. Okay. Any other resources that you guys wanted us to share here or talk about while we still got you? All right, great. Well, one other thing that we got coming up for you in February that we'll be announcing is we're going to be doing a CRP, Component Relations Professional. We're going to be doing a boot camp. So we're going to be going over the most requested topics, and we're going to be going in depth into each one. We're thinking it's going to be 5 days, digitally over webinar in a row, and we'll set it up in a way and ask you guys for some feedback on different times or days that work well. And we're going to be doing a boot camp for you where we're going to be diving deep into all of these topics, okay? And Stacy asked, oh yeah, great. Anyone else just let us know if you want us to register you for that chat on Tuesday. Stacy just said she'd like to register for it. So we'll send out the link, but if you want us to register you, just let us know and we can do that and save you guys some time. All right. Well, that wraps up. I can't believe it's already been 3 weeks we've been talking about Champion Dashboards. Please give us your feedback on how these webinars are adding value for you, or maybe they're not, okay? And tell us that too, because we learn more from what we're not doing well than just saying good job. Although we appreciate when we are appreciated, if there's things that you are going to find more value out of, please let us know that, and don't be afraid to be blunt. We want to find out ways to improve the way CRPs are finding success in associations, because there's some incredible examples out there that we just find people don't know about, that we want you to know that you guys aren't alone. So let us know, we'd be happy to, and that feedback is incredible for us. If not, I hope to see you on Tuesday in our chat. Also, we've been, like I said, if you want us to come out and do a knowledge share assessment, let us know. We will be happy to jump on the phone with you and walk through where you're at as a CRP. And you can tell us, like, gosh, my executive director is being a pain in my rear and is giving me conflicting information. Like, we're here to help walk through that with you, okay, and point you in the right direction. And if it makes sense, like today I'm in DC and we're headquartered in Detroit, because I'm sitting down with 3 associations with their entire, like, different departments, walking through a lot of resources for where they're at, okay? That's free. We don't expect anything out of it. We're just trying to learn as much as we can to build better tools for people like you, all right? So everybody giving us some appreciation in the webinar chat, I really appreciate it. I know a lot of you, and Stacey just said that, are still in processing mode. Be happy to chat even if you don't have goals and you just want to mind dump with us. We'd love to engage with you. If we don't hear from you, happy Thanksgiving, everybody. We'll see you after the holidays, and we will talk to everybody soon. Thanks for joining today.